Okay, today's class is on office and retail. We might have a few more attendees, but we're going to go ahead and start. Forgot the sign-in sheet, but let's just, maybe you can just tear out a piece of paper and we can just do it that way. There we go. All right, let's go right into it. Let's start with office. First thing about office space is the most important part is the three classes, A, B, and C. Okay? What would you say are the main defining characters of Class A office space?
Well, location, and probably the terms of the lease.
The
Size.
terms of the lease are part of it. The location is the most important, but also the newness of the building, but also the amenities of the building.
Yeah.
Okay, so normally Class A is going to be new construction in the best areas, and it's going to attract the most rent. But you also could have something that's a trophy building like the Empire State Building. That's still an A building.
Yeah,
Okay?
right.
So newness is one, but also the amenities. Okay?
And sought
So-
after too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The highest rent. There are what's called A plus. You know, in any city, there's going to be like the most desirable amenities would be which building has an Equinox. Okay, an Equinox is much more sought after than another type of health club like a 24-hour fitness or something, or which one has the Whole Foods on the bottom instead of the Sprouts. Sprouts is good, but it's not Whole Foods. Okay, so that's the Class A, and of course that is got all the other amenities. It's got the high visibility location. It's usually in the city central business district. And all of these definitions are the specific wording and the dimensions on what's a mid-rise and a high-rise are done through BOMA. And I have that up here because I want you guys to learn some of this other stuff too besides just, but BOMA is the group for office buildings and high-rises. And BOMA is the Building Owners and Managers Association International. And every single city has a BOMA chapter. But basically it's like if you're in the office sector or medical office, you got to know about BOMA, okay? And all these groups have like these conferences and seminars and things that I'm going to talk to you more about, but that's where you meet the big players in these industries, okay? So BOMA also has training designations that they have, and one of them is for like maintenance and facilities directors and people that do the maintenance side. But then there's also one that's on the management side, and it's called RPA, a Real Property Administrator. And this is the second most prestigious designation in property management. The most prestigious is CPM, Certified Property Manager, and that's through IREM, the Institute of Real Estate Management. So most people know about CPM, but there's also another one that's also very prestigious called RPA. And so when somebody has an RPA, you pretty much know that they do like office buildings or medical office, because that's kind of the specialty that they would learn. With CPM, they learn all the different types of properties. So CPM can be over anything. They can be over apartments, they can be over industrial, they can be over office, they can be over retail, okay? So CPM is a more general and it is more prestigious and more well-known. RPA is next. There's also these same designations that other countries have. Canada, Australia, so it's like basically there's like a chart that shows, you know, and if somebody comes here from Australia, they can get a CPM or an RPA much quicker because a lot of their education will translate over and they'll let them get credit for that, okay? And the reason that these designations are important is that there's a lot of industrial, there's a lot of investment grade companies that will not use property managers or brokers unless they have these designations, just because they trust that that extra education is going to get them, you know, a better broker. Okay, so it gets you business, but it also gets you the big business. So, all right, now Class B properties, of course, are considered decent as far as offices go. These buildings usually don't have the same high quality fixtures, architectural details, and impressive lobbies as Class A, but they are generally nice structures with fully functional facilities. Their locations, building systems, and property manager are described as average to above average. Therefore, Class B office space tends to command average rent. The majority of Class B buildings are fewer than 4 stories tall and often found in the suburbs on the edge of financial districts. Now, some Class B buildings are in the very best central business districts. They've just become Class B because they haven't been kept up. So sometimes you can get a Class B building that you can rehab and make Class A again. Okay, a lot of Class B used to be Class A, okay? But if it's out in the suburbs, you can't do much about it because no matter how great the building is, if it doesn't have the location, like close walking distance to, you know, shops, restaurants, hotels, you can't do it, okay? Now, Class C is the poorest quality structures on the market. They tend to be located in the least desirable areas of cities and usually in need of major repairs or complete renovation. They are usually more than 20 years old. Some Class C properties remain occupied, commanding lower rents and attracting tenants with smaller operations that cannot afford nicer spaces. Other Class C buildings are sold as rehab opportunities. Sometimes they can be sold and redeveloped into something that's better, but normally they're just going to be the bad locations in the bad part of town. Now, with some improvements and repairs, a Class C building can be upgraded to Class B, though it is unlikely to ever achieve Class A, just because of its location and age. So you can turn B to A, but you can't turn C to A. Okay. All right. Okay, so that's overview of some of the office. Now, most offices do a gross lease, okay? So when you do an office lease, normally it's not only going to include everything, but it also sometimes will include janitorial, because office owners like to control everything in their office, okay? Now, there are still going to be CAM charges for the common area, and normally it's going to be based on the percentage of the building that you lease, okay? You have a 100,000 square foot building, your office is 10,000 square feet, you have 10% of the area. So 10% of the building common area expenses are normally going to be paid by you, okay? There's something on Class A and plus buildings called a gross up clause. And what a gross up clause does is it says, let's take that same example that you have 10% and the building is now 90% occupied. It's got a thing in there that says if the building ever goes below, let's say 70%, like in a recession, that everyone that's left will get their space grossed up because the owner is not going to pay any additional like the general operating expense. So basically, if they're down to 50% occupancy, those 50% their gross up is going to go up, and they're going to pay a higher CAM charge for the common areas until the building gets back to high occupancy. So it's not something that a lot of buildings can do, only the very top buildings, but it's just a way that some investors put that in because they need to keep their return at a certain amount, especially if they're like a life insurance company or a public company. They have to be able to project what their income is going to be, so they're not going to take the hit.
Yeah.
They're going to pass that on to the tenants. Okay. Medical office is a subsection of office, but it's its own specialty. It's normally going to be located near hospitals. Makes sense. There's also two parts to it. There's the lease side and the sales side. Okay, not every brokers do both. A lot of family offices will do a lot of their own leasing, but they'll hire outside brokers to do sales. Or sometimes they will just run the property, but they hire, whoever is good in that area, JLL, CBRE, they'll hire outside companies for leasing, but they may not use that same broker, but some do. They'll use that same brokerage when they want to sell the property or buy another one, okay? So medical office is more about location, but it's also about aesthetics. If they're a plastic surgeon, they're going to want to be in a Class A building, where if they're a dialysis clinic, the location doesn't need to be as nice because that's something that people are going to find them regardless.
As long as it's close to a hospital.
Yeah. Okay. So last year, office was $10 billion to brokerage. There's a lot that's outside of brokerage. A lot of owner operators do their own sales, do their own leasing. So it's a lot bigger market than 10 billion, but $10 billion went through brokerage houses in the office space last year. So it's big, but it's not as big. Now this is just office, not medical office.
Okay.
Medical office is separate. But I just wanted to give you a comparison between office and retail, okay? Retail is so big that just one of the major subsections of retail, net lease, last year was 65 billion compared to 10 billion in office. But if you think about it, there's a lot more of the retail, especially the net lease, okay?
Plus they're larger too for the most part, right? I mean,
Yeah, but there's also way more. I mean,
Yeah.
every
Sure.
Ross and Marshalls and Walgreens and
Whatever.
restaurant, all those are considered net lease, part of the net lease part. Okay. So, included in retail is also, you know what QSR is? Quick serve restaurants.
Yeah.
It's their fancy term for fast food.
Fast food.
Okay? So that is a huge part of retail and triple net and net lease. All that is all different words for the same thing. But basically, this is a type of property that at my old company, we used to have two teams, multifamily and net lease. And what we would do is we would take owners that had a bunch of equity in their multifamily, in their apartment building. But with apartments, you got to worry about getting calls in the middle of the night because, there's a maintenance issue. Or you got to worry about rent control. You got to worry about the city. You got to put a property manager if it's above 16 buildings. It's an intensive, management intensive type of property, type of investment. We would tell them, hey, why don't you sell that and we'll put you into a Starbucks or a CVS out in Texas. And it's a triple net property, so basically the tenant has to pay for all the maintenance. And all you do is just get the rent each month, and it's a 10-year or a 20-year corporate-backed lease, okay? So that is what the triple net part and the corporate-backed lease is what makes these properties attractive, okay? They call it passive income, they call it mailbox money, but basically it's like, you you don't have to worry that much about your property when you got a absolute net or a triple net, because roof and structure, parking lot, all that's taken care of, because these large corporations love to be able to lease, because not only do they get to write it off, but they want the flexibility to be able to move out of there if it doesn't work out. So even though in some ways you would think it would make sense for a lot of these to own the property, some of them do. McDonald's owns a lot, and Chick-fil-A will own its like prime locations. In-N-Out owns a lot of its prime locations, but that's because they used to get that back in the 40s and 50s when the land was cheap. Nowadays, Starbucks and all those, they make a lot of money, but they would rather lease their buildings. So a lot of those properties are owned by just like regular people, regular investors. So that's just one of the parts of retail that is huge. So the retail is everything from private investors, mom and pops, all the way up to REITs and institutional investors, okay? So let's go into a little bit about the types of shopping centers, and then we'll go into some of these shows, okay? Now, first, all shopping centers and all retail and office have what's called a trade area. And the trade area is the geographic area from which a shopping center or single tenant net lease retail attains its customers, clients, and shoppers. A primary trade area is the surrounding geographic area which about 60-80% of the sales originate, okay? So that's the first thing that someone's gonna wanna know or look at when they're considering a shopping center is what is going on around the trade area. Some of the things they're going to want to know, and some of the shorthand they use, is a common shorthand reference to trade area is, are there enough rooftops, and importantly, the right type of rooftops, okay? And rooftops is the households, the houses, okay? Because you want to put, let's say you want to put a drugstore somewhere, that you can put anywhere. But you want to do a Gucci store, you can't put that anywhere. You got to put that somewhere where the houses around there have enough income to afford what you're putting there, okay? So that's where you come up with the demographics.
They call it rooftop?
Rooftops. Yeah, but some people also call it just household and household income. But rooftops is something you hear, so you should know those little lingo just so you know what's going on. The demographics, or the number of incomes of people in the trade area, will determine the type of shopping center that serves a particular population. Going back to rooftops, very few locations on earth can support luxury retail like Gucci and on the other hand, drugstores, supermarkets, and McDonald's you can put those anywhere because everyone needs those or uses those. Okay, so let's go into some of the different types. Malls, enclosed or open air, tend to be larger size. Strip centers or plazas or open centers can be anywhere from 2 stores up to 50 in a straight line, an L or a U shape. So malls originated in the United States, and all these handouts I will have available to you guys, but the original shopping centers or malls are pretty much standard everywhere, where they have 4 or 5 anchors, and then the small little restaurants and stores are in between. Where do you think they make their money on these shopping centers? Where do they?
Probably on the smaller units.
Yeah. The anchors, they either own their land or they just pay a small portion of the rent, but they're there to draw in everything else. They make their money from those other small stores and the small restaurants that are in there. That's where they make their money. Okay. All right. So there's different types of malls, and then we go into the smaller strip centers. So So a strip center can be different shape, but basically it's may or may not have anchors. Single tenant net lease. We talked about that. It's a standalone retail, restaurant, or service, and they can either be full price, discount, off price, or luxury, which lately it's the discount that has been doing much better than full price and luxury. Okay, so you got a lot of dollar stores, you got a lot of Ross and Marshalls that are expanding, where a lot of the Macy's and those kind of stores are closing because of the internet. Okay, so it says here that the type of shopping center is defined. So all these definitions of what makes a strip center or neighborhood center are done by Urban Land Institute, okay? And that's another one of these organizations that, just like BOMA, but Urban Land Institute, these are the group that has to do with land development and vacant land all over the country. But mostly it's about cities and suburbs that all of the lobbying is done about, PUDs, planned urban developments, and different things to do with what you do with developing land, raw land. That's the group. Convenience center, and they basically have each one as defined. A convenience center, the gross leasing area is 5,000 and 30,000 square feet, and it has a trade area of about 1 mile. Neighborhood center, that has between 30 and 150,000 square feet. It's usually 3 to 15 acres and a trade area of 1 to 3 acres. So these REITs, a lot of them that used to buy malls, now they're doing what's called repositioning, because malls are not a good thing to get in. But a lot of them have been buying up these neighborhood centers, because neighborhood centers that has a Ralph's and a Rite Aid, and then it has like a nail salon and dry cleaners, all those things are Amazon proof. People still want to go to the dry cleaners, they still want to go to their neighborhood store, okay? So they're getting out of the malls and they're going into these kind of things because they think they're safer for the next 20, 30 years. That's how far they look out. Community center, a little bit bigger, 100,000 to 350. Some of these are also called power centers, 250 to 1 million. So a power center would be, it's not just like a regular small little strip center. It's like these are got the big boxes. Like this would have like a Best Buy and a Home Depot and then some smaller stores in between. So that's a power center. Lifestyle center, big power center where you have like, off the freeway, you're gonna have like a Target, a Home Depot. It's gonna have like 5 or 6 of these big boxes with what's also called out parcels. Like you could have like a big power center, but the land at the front that's, got the McDonald's and the Carl's Jr., those are called out parcels. And those can be owned or leased, but they're usually separate and usually developed at separate times than the main power center. Okay, sometimes those sit vacant for a long time. We got a meeting or something? Okay, regional mall.
What would you call the shopping center on Fallbrook in Victory? With all the big box. A lot of people call it a mall, but it's not really a mall. It's kind of a power.
Yeah, it's power center. A lot of those were malls that they had to reposition because the closed up mall is not really the thing anymore. So,
and it seems different than what the Village is. What would that? Is that a community?
No, I think that would be.
No real big box besides maybe.
I think that's what they call now a festival center or theme area. It's kind of like open. Like the Grove is like the concept now that works.
Correct.
Okay, and then there's also factory outlet centers, which everyone knows what those are, but those can be small. There's a small one on the way to Vegas, and then there's a huge one on the way to Vegas, and then there's a big one in Camarillo. So it's like these factory outlets are another different type. All right, how are we doing on time?
5 minutes.
Okay. All right. So you guys will have all these handouts. Let's talk about these designations and these different. Who knows what ICSC is? International Council of Shopping Centers. They have a big show this weekend in Vegas. They have like 5 or 6 shows all over the country. But Recon, the retail convention, is the biggest. It's May 19th through the 22nd. Over 100,000 attendees. Okay? 700 booths. And this is who goes to this. 20% of everyone that's there are brokers. You guys, your competition. So what's the other 80%? 30% owners of retail centers and shopping centers. 20% CEOs, because not all the owners, some owners are so big, they hire CEOs to run the shopping centers for them. And 30% are managing directors and VPs of real estate. Okay? So these are the people that you get to know them at this convention. They will send you business if they like you and think you know what you're doing. Okay? So instead of cold calling these companies, you also should go to these if you want to, step up your business. Okay? That's if you do retail. If you do office, BOMA is having one of their big annual conventions, June 20. This is just an example for you guys. I mean, you don't have to do this year, but think about it for next year. But June 22nd through 23rd, BOMA is having their big annual conference in Salt Lake City. And it's BOMA.org. That's their website. ISCS.org is the International Council of Shopping Centers. All these companies, all these groups, they all have lobby groups and trade groups, and they all have seminars, conferences, events, not just nationwide, but they all have local chapters. There's a local chapter of BOMA, okay? Urban Land Institute, the ones that have to do with development. They not only have a education designation you can get, but they have a local chapter that has events, like multiple events each week. So it's like, Mayor Garcetti goes to these, the councilmen go. So ULI.org is the Urban Land Institute. These are 2 of the local ones they're doing. They're doing a green building and conference expo. And then there's something called STIM ULI. There's a breakfast, and it's LA's largest new development, and it's a $1 billion development that's designed by Frank Gehry, who's pretty famous. Okay? Yeah. So that's Urban Land Institute. It's like, you go to these kind of events, that's where you're going to rub up shoulders and meet the players in the type of real estate that you want to do. Okay? Talked about CPM. CPM is in the Institute of Real Estate Management. That is the most prestigious, and that is the general property management designation for all types of commercial real estate. Who knows what CCIM is? Okay. This is the commercial investment manager. This is pretty much one of the top 2 most prestigious designations for commercial real estate. Okay? The CCIM Institute is how you get this, and it has a lot to do with experience, it has to do with classes that you take, and then there's a test. So nobody just gets the CCIM. It's expensive, but some CCIMs, if they're referring across country, are only going to refer to other CCIMs because they know they at least have a certain level of education and competence.
Yes.
Okay? But a lot of these big REITs will only use people that have these type of designations. Okay? They're not going to let anybody manage their property that doesn't have a CPM or an RPA. Just because, you can have a degree that doesn't mean anything. having these means something
Means something.
in this business to certain people.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, CCIM is kind of a general for all commercial. Okay? So a CCIM can pretty much do any type. They're going to have their own specialty. Now, SIOR is similar, but this is, anybody can get this with the right education. This one is by invitation only, but this is the Society of Industrial and Office Realtors. Okay? So anybody that has an SIOR, it's industrial and office properties.
It's like a club.
Yeah.
Gotta be invited in.
Well, yeah, but if you have this, even though you're invited in, you still have to take a bunch of
I'm
classes
sure, yeah.
and all that. But if you already have this, it's almost automatic. You don't even have to take any of the classes. You just take a test.
Yeah.
And just like if you have the CPM, you can get this like much easier. So if you get any of these, getting the other ones, but you really only need one to just show, hey, I take this seriously. This is what I do. Because this probably costs you $5,000 to get, and it'll probably cost you $1,000 or $2,000 every year to keep. Okay? But if you're dealing with these type of clients, if you're dealing with these type of whatever, it's worth it. It's like an investment in your profession. Okay? Anybody have any questions about any of this? Okay? Thank you for coming.